I am Dr. Pamela Leggett-Robinson, founder and executive director of PLR Consulting in Atlanta, Georgia. Whether I was a singing TA in organic chemistry lab, a new assistant professor at Tuskegee University, or an associate department chair at Georgia State University Perimeter College, my time, energy, and passion was consistently focused on developing and broadening participation of Black and Brown students and faculty in STEM. PLR Consulting is the embodiment of my 20-year experience in STEM and higher education. The love that I have for program development, program evaluation, dissemination, and personal project management, which we call coaching, is my life's work. We strive to empower and encourage people of color in the STEM fields to become leaders and servants of their communities. The book Overcoming Barriers for Women of Color in STEM Fields, Emerging Research and Opportunities, is a composite of storytelling and reflections of the transformations that women of color have undergone while navigating the STEM landscape, if you will. Highlights of this text are much needed areas of reform. So the literature speaks to tokenism, microaggressions, identity, belonging, tenure and promotion denial, as well as nonlinear careers. As most books really just talk basically from the perspective of overcoming the barriers, we oftentimes don't look at the women themselves. And so this text is something a little different. We actually dive into those transformations, those gems that the women actually account for at the end of their transformation, at the end of their process. I liken it to the butterfly effect. You have the cocoon, it's dark, you don't know what the other side looks like. But when the butterfly emerges, it's something so spectacular that nature just has to hold its breath. So the book Overcoming Barriers for Women of Color in STEM is just that. It is a collection of stories and reflections that help guide women through the process and show what it's like to get to the other side and to be that butterfly in STEM. So I want to take the time to thank all the authors and reviewers for their contributions to the text. The authors, people have asked me, how do I know them? You'd be surprised. Some of them I have personal and professional relationships with. Some of them I met for the first time, and some of them simply answered the call to submit a book chapter. Nonetheless, all of these women are great in their own professional rights and lend stories and reflections to make this book an amazing piece of research literature. Each chapter underwent blind reviews. 3 or 4 reviewers looked at each chapter, and they really held the author's feet to the fire. They ensured that the literature was sound, that it made sense, and that each chapter spoke to the theme of the book. The reviewers were people from organizations, institutions, nonprofits, government agencies that span the United States. A lot of these reviewers I had no contact with prior to. It was simply an all call, hey, would you be willing to? Hey, would you be willing to? And they stepped up and was like, yes, I would love to be a part of this publication. I remember asking Dr. Sabrina Collins, would she write the foreword? I had never met her a day in my life. And she asked me to send her the abstract, and immediately within 5 minutes, she was like, I would be humbled and grateful to write this forward. So without the contributions of the authors, the reviewers, as well as the person that wrote the forward, this publication could have never come to light. And so I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. And now it's time for you to hear from the authors and find out a little bit more about their chapters in their own words.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sabrina Collins. I am a proud chemist, and I am absolutely honored to provide the foreword for the forthcoming book, Overcoming Barriers for Women of Color in the STEM Fields. And actually, as I began writing the foreword, I thought about how each of us has a responsibility to share their testimony to help somebody else. You know, sometimes people need to know they are not the only ones going through a difficult life situation or a difficult career challenge. And for me, being denied tenure, that was my barrier, but I overcame it. And so again, I'm honored to provide the foreword for this forthcoming book. I think it is a valuable tool and resource that will help you navigate through your STEM journey.
Have you ever wondered if you could be your full self within your professional space, or if you had to let go of pieces of who you are in order to fit in and advance? Well, I'm Dr. Angela White, and along with Dr. Kalisha Petty and Dr. Jessica DeGuire-Gumby, our book chapter, Negotiating Intersectionality, the Triple Pressure of Being an African American Female Scientist, begins to address this question for African American females. We looked into the lived experiences of African American females pursuing science degrees at historically Black colleges and universities to learn more about their identity negotiation processes. Could they be both African American and a scientist simultaneously? Or did they have to relinquish parts of who they are in order to pursue a science degree? Across 5 Southeastern HBCUs, we pulled in African American females to learn more about their experiences as well as the role HBCUs play in this process. Surprisingly, even within an HBCU context, our chapter will reveal that these females felt like they had to release parts of who they are in terms of race in order to become a scientist and operate within science communities of practice. I want you to think about this and look deeper into our chapter. There's an intersectionality that African American females experience and have to negotiate between their race, their gender, and being a scientist. This is the triple pressure that we reveal in our book chapter. Again, I'm Dr. Angela White, and I encourage you to read our chapter, Negotiating Intersectionality.
Hi, my name is Tyresa Jackson, and I'm currently a graduate student at Teachers College, Columbia University, in the Masters of Art in Cognitive Science and Education program. My chapter will provide an analysis of looking at school segregation within New York City pertaining to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. The first section of my chapter will look at the historical overview of school segregation within New York City with a particular focus on looking at the Harlem Rock 9 case. The second part of my chapter will then look at implications of how school segregation is influencing the performance of African American girls within the field of STEM. The next section will provide recommendations on how schools can help to address some of these achievement gaps within the field of STEM for girls of color. The importance of why I decided to focus on this chapter is because representation is one major facet that is important for communities of color, and particularly for women. Diversity in the medical field as well as in medical research can help to support and bring new research and insight to diseases impacting communities of color. And furthermore, by helping girls of color become more educated within the field of STEM, they too can become future leaders and educators. I hope you enjoy my chapter, and thank you so much for listening.
Hello. My name is Shireen Aubert, and I currently serve as the Dean of the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University and the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. The chapter that I contributed to describes how important it is for women of color to engage in networking opportunities. Networking is considered an investment in social relationships that ultimately have a very important return on your career path. it is important for you to be viewed as a scholar who contributes new knowledge to the discipline that also impacts society. One of the things that I enjoyed about contributing to this chapter is really reflecting back on the various experiences that I have had, both as a faculty member, as a scholar, but also as an administrator. Lots of tips will be provided in this chapter, lots of ways to really think about what does networking mean, and lots of ways to really understand how to navigate what academia has to offer. I hope you will enjoy reading the chapter titled Successful STEM Women of Color Must Network Differently.
Hello, my name is Nicole Powell, and I'm an associate professor of chemistry. And the title of my book chapter is Navigating the STEM Professorate as a Black Woman, Surviving, but at What Cost? I chose to write this book chapter because many of our colleagues and the wider public see us moving up the academic ranks, but many of them are unaware of the toll that surviving academia has on us. And even when we survive, we are often afraid to tell our true experiences because of the very real fear of retaliation. I chose to contribute to this project because I want to see more Black women succeeding in STEM and also in academic administrative positions. And the current system just does not foster that success. So let's have a real look at some of the issues and find ways to help Black women in STEM not only survive, but also thrive.
Hi, my name is Pamela Scott Johnson, and I would like to talk to you about our chapter, A Journey Worth Traveling, Mentoring and Role Models Matter. Our chapter reflects upon the journey of African American women in science. Through critical lenses, we recognize how much more difficult the journey would have been had we not had networks of individuals who supported us, and the critical role of historically Black colleges and universities. Understanding the context of the times and the need to develop these networks can facilitate the success of a new generation of African American women. So what about role models? Well, the lack of female K through 12 teachers and STEM professors removes a source of visible role models for existing and aspiring other females. And then what about mentoring? Well, mentoring is that relationship in which a more experienced person shares and guides, advises a lesser experienced person. So these two elements of having visible role models and being in the context of an environment that affirms you and supports who you are is really critical. More importantly, we have an obligation to the next generation. So please read our chapter. Role models do matter. Mentoring does matter. And we would just love to hear your thoughts. Take care.
Hi, my name is Dr. Christy Graham, STEMresilience.com, and I'm so excited to be a part of this book project. And this is actually my journey, and I am sharing it with you in this book chapter. Not unlike many women in STEM, I explored my career through the lens of my colleagues, my friends, my family, and not as much through the lens of people who actually looked like me. I did, though, have the good fortune of being a part of a lot of different activities and initiatives associated with women of color in STEM, and that provided a backdrop for my ability to make it through for such a long period of time. I would challenge you to ask two questions at all stages of your career. The first one is, what elements did I pick up on my journey to success? And the second is, what elements do I now need to discard as I move to the next element of my journey? I believe there are 7 potentially positive elements, and they include wise counsel from coaches, respect, RESPECT, positive interpersonal interactions, reflection, rejuvenation, regeneration, and revitalization, to name a few. However, you can also pick up some negative elements on the way that you need to discard or you need to deal with. These elements can be disastrous to your work and your personal life. So potential negative elements include stress, frustration, and pent-up hostility, bias, micro and macroaggressions, unhealthy competition, inequitable allocation of resources and opportunities. I'm really excited to be a part of this book project, and I hope that you enjoy it. And remember, be resilient in STEM. Dr. Christine Grant.
What the book means to me, the book is a way to give voice to the voiceless in STEM, a way to give credence to their work. It's a way to give power to the stories of women, and it's a way to address those barriers that consistently occur each and every day for women of color in STEM. I do know that every woman doesn't experience the same things. There's some women that never experience a bad day with microaggressions or tokenism or prejudice or stereotypes. I get that. But for the women that did, I wanted to be their voice. But I also wanted them to understand that there's so much more on the other side, and that even in the process, we become better. That's what the book meant to me. It was an opportunity for me actually to journal and think about my life's work and my journey in STEM. Some of the challenges, getting started was probably the first challenge. Getting over the imposter syndrome of actually being able to do it. In fact, when the publishing company asked me to write the chapter, I asked them what were my options. And they told me either I could write the chapter myself or I could edit the chapter, the book. And I opted to do the editing because I figured it was easier. But once again, the process showed me a lot about myself. It was very difficult reaching out to people that I had never met to pitch an idea that I did not think people would gravitate to, or even be willing to share their stories. That was probably the most challenging. Understanding that this would be difficult, understanding that I would still have to write, was also challenging. But I think the hardest part came at the very end. I was about to go send my last chapter in. I think I actually had. And I was supposed to have 15 chapters. And so the publishing company said, okay, you can have 14. And then I got down to 11, and the final count was 7. And I remember the publishing company telling me that they didn't know if they were going to be able to publish the book because I didn't have that many chapters. And I reflected on some of the reasons that these women of color gave me in writing for not wanting to submit their chapters. Fear of retaliation, fear of not being promoted or being given tenure, fear that their work would not be valued. And so for me, that was probably the most challenging because I had to let it sit and I had to say that out loud and put it in writing. But the other side of that is that the publishing company came back in less than 30 minutes and said they understood and they realized that this book had to be published for those very reasons. So stay tuned for updates about the book release, pricing, and all other things related to overcoming barriers for women of color in STEM fields on my website, plrconsultingservices.org. To celebrate the release of the book, we are going to have a live reading from the different chapters of the book, as well as the foreword from some special guests. So hope that you tune in. All that information will be on the website as well. I look forward to talking to you soon, and I hope you are just as excited as I am about this wonderful, wonderful text.